Well, there's no denying that we love the Wii U. But there's also no denying that it was a commercial failure. In today's episode, we are going to talk about 5 things that Nintendo could have done to save our beloved console, the Wii U. What are we drinking today?
Today we're drinking Pumpkin Spice Latte by Lake Brewery. It's an English stout.
All right, you know the drill. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you never miss one of our bi-weekly uploads. And sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and let's talk about 5 things Nintendo could have done to save our beloved Wii U.
Nerd. Keep gaming, keep drinking, and keep gaming off the grid.
Those of you who've been around for a while know we absolutely adore Nintendo's confused console, misunderstood console, the Wii U. It was kind of an epic commercial fail for Nintendo, coming off the heels of a very successful run with the Nintendo Wii. There are some things, though, we feel like Nintendo could have done to maybe give the Wii U some more life. I don't know that it would have pushed it into that Wii stratosphere, but let's talk about those.
So let's jump into the first category, and that is branding. The Wii U struggled hardcore with branding. First off, the name, Wii U. A lot of people thought it was an extension or a plug-in or something for the Wii. Why did they call it the Wii U? What the heck?
You know, gamers knew it was its own thing.
Yes.
But Nintendo's marketed, you gotta understand who's buying these consoles for their kids. A lot of parents, a lot of grandparents. Funny enough, I just sold a copy on eBay of Mario Party 10 that I got while I was out thrifting. And the lady reached out to me and said, hey, I'd like to return this. I had no idea this would not play in my Wii console. And it was just kind of a back to reality for me, and I was like, I think a lot of people were in this middle ground. She was a grandmother, said she bought it for her grandson, and was very disappointed that it didn't work in her Nintendo Wii. And, you know, as a gamer, I'm kind of like, well, no shit.
Duh.
But I think a lot of people were caught in that territory.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't understand it. Dude, if they would have just called it something different, just something that didn't have the word Wii in it, I feel like it would have gotten done so much better. People wouldn't have been confused. And that's just such an easy thing. Just name it something different. I don't know what they were trying to do.
And, you know, even the colors and stuff that they were using were, like, similar and in line.
It looks just like the Wii. The console looks just like the Wii, just laying down. It's very weird. I don't know why they did it. Doesn't make sense. I know Nintendo's weird, but this is too weird.
Yeah, and then, you know, like, those initial launch videos or trailers are kind of like, they just felt weird. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than I was just kind of like, huh?
What?
I mean, I was always interested because I'm a Nintendo fanboy, for sure, and I wanted the Wii U right when it came out, but still, I think for the masses, the branding was a huge issue. Moving on to the next thing on the list that I think could have really helped the Wii U is the portability and range
Of the tablet. Yes.
Yeah, so you guys know who have a Wii U. You start losing connection very quick. A lot of people, I think, were looking for that, you know, what we eventually got with the Switch. Now, I don't think they would have ever probably at that time been able to do the full-on portability.
No, but if they could have just made it like you could go throughout your house, you can barely go to the next room. Which sucks because sometimes you're playing a game and you're like, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
but you want to keep playing.
Yeah, it works, you know, it works decent, but it could have been better. I was very curious as to why Nintendo never released like a signal boost or something like that.
They should have done something. Well, I know it was only in production for 5 years, so by the time people had started to fail, they probably just gave up on it. But still.
Yeah, I mean, I know personally, you know, I hang out, and I think a lot of people hang out, like, in another area of their home, like, whether that be their deck or their garage, and I would love nothing more than be able to go down to my garage from upstairs here and play the Wii U while I'm just sitting out there enjoying a cigar or enjoying a nice summer evening. But you couldn't do that because the range was pretty dodgy.
Now let's move on to definitive first-party releases. So, obviously, there's some great first-party releases on the Wii U. But they kind of get overlooked, and they're kind of confusing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I always felt like, okay, so let's talk about leading up to the Wii U, and I think this will maybe illustrate our point better. You know, you had Super Mario World. You had Mario 64. You had Mario Galaxy. Then skip a generation, you have Mario Odyssey. For the Wii U, there's an epic Mario release, Mario 3D World. But it came out right after Mario 3D Land came out.
Yeah.
It didn't really feel like its own thing. Now, had they named it something different, I think this game would have done,
better.
You know, maybe even better. It didn't come out and land for me anyways, and I think a lot of people as a system seller.
No.
It wasn't like, oh my god, I've got to get a Wii U because Mario 3D World is out. It didn't land like that, where I feel like Mario 64, Mario Odyssey, Mario Galaxy, those were system sellers. You knew unequivocally, whether you were a grandmother or a young kid, that was the new Mario game that you had to have. Then the other Mario game was the new Super Mario Brothers U.
Which was just... That goes back to branding. That name is like so weird.
Yeah.
And there was a version on the Wii, Super Mario.
So you're wondering, is it the same game, just different levels? Like, what does this entail? And I felt that way in multiple occurrences on the Wii U. Mario Kart, which is, obviously it's the one that even got ported over to the Switch, but Mario Kart 8, this was the first Mario Kart that was like, except for on handhelds, but on a mainline console that wasn't your Super Mario Kart 64, then you had Mario Kart Wii, you had Mario Kart Double Dash, and then on the Wii U, you got Mario Kart 8. I also think about Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Epic game. But again, you had Donkey Kong Country. That's a Super Nintendo thing. Then you had Donkey Kong 64. And then you kind of come back and the Donkey Kong Country returns, but it did not come off and land as a system seller. Now, there were other games that possibly were, but notoriously, if Nintendo isn't launching with the must-own next mainline Mario game, a Zelda, or some sort of Donkey Kong or something like that, it's really hard to get those systems to fly off the shelves. You wonder, had the Wii U, branding and everything aside, let's say everything was the same, and Mario Odyssey was the launch title for the Wii U.
It would have done way different.
I have a hard time thinking they wouldn't have sold an additional 10 million consoles.
Yeah, it would not have been a commercial failure, and I think it would have stayed in production a lot longer.
Yeah.
It would have just had a lot more relationships, more customers. It would have done a lot better if, say, Odyssey was on the Wii U.
Yeah, so I don't know the right words to really illustrate that point, but I think if you lived in the moment, you maybe kind of felt that way. I remember thinking, like, Splatoon was the game that was kind of the system seller for me.
Well, and then there's also Mario Maker. Those are great games, but it's not like a first-party Mario title,
It didn't land, where when the Switch launched and it had Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, which Breath of the Wild was a late system release on the Wii U as well. But you get the point that as major launch titles, regardless of what you thought of the Switch, it's kind of like, you know what, I'm a huge Nintendo fan. I have to play Odyssey. I have to play Breath of the Wild. I don't care what it looks like, what it's called, what branding there is. Those are system sellers, and out of the blocks, the Wii U was kind of on uneasy ground with their system sellers.
And speaking of being on uneasy ground, I think the time of release of the console was very weird. Like, what generation is the Wii U in? It's super weird. So it was released 6 years after the Wii, which is kind of normal for consoles, Yeah. The PS3 came out 6 years after the PS2, for example. So that's kind of normal.
But what gen did it belong in?
Yeah, because the PS4 came out a year later, so it was a little bit earlier than that. Yeah, it's just very confusing. Like, is it part of the Wii generation?
Mm-hmm.
Is it part of the new generation? It doesn't make any sense. It's kind of confusing. I don't know.
And you got to think, too, the Wii was still firing on all cylinders at that time.
Yeah,
I mean, hell, we're still getting new Just Dance games released on the Wii, I think in 2020. But the 3DS was on fire, too. And then, kind of back to our point before, when you go releasing games that have a very similar branding as far as Mario 3D Land, and then you release a home console with Mario 3D World,
yeah.
And then you have Mario Kart 7 on the 3DS, and then you have the same similar branding, but it's just called Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U. I think a lot of people had the Wii. They had kind of phased into getting the 3DS for their kids, and it was almost like too much too soon.
It's like,
and it was confusing.
We just got you a new console.
Yeah.
Don't you already have that game? Like,
yeah, and then it's really hard. I mean, I think and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think the reason I think the Switch is doing well because it kind of waited for the dust to settle, if you will.
It took its time.
Which in theory is kind of what the Wii U did too, but then the PS4 and Xbox One came out, and it was already on uneasy ground.
And it got buried.
It just whooped its ass. Where the Switch has had a couple years of lead time to kind of get some footing, and it's got its own like niche market. So I don't think the PS5 and Xbox One's going to hurt it a ton per se, because it's doing something completely different. Does that make any sense? I don't know.
It makes sense to us, and that's all that matters. We got one more thing we want to talk about, and this is so important. If they would have had this, I feel like it would have just helped so much. But let's talk about this beer. What do you think of the Pumpkin Spice Latte by Lake Time Brewery?
My local Iowa brewery, we try being very generous to our local breweries. Lake Time Brewery has had some major good beers on the channel before. Yep. I'm a stout fan, and best thing I can say about this beer is it's extremely lackluster.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like,
there's not much going on for being. It has a slight coffee taste. It has a very, slight pumpkin taste. If you're
Yeah.
searching for it, you can find it, which sucks because they call it a pumpkin spice latte,
Yeah.
which pumpkin should be the pushing flavor. It dissipates really quickly in the mouth. It kind of is disappointing.
Yeah.
It sucks. I hate saying that. I hate saying bad things about breweries,
Especially local.
especially
Yeah.
local. But I know Lake Time, they have amazing brews. So like,
Yeah.
and they're probably just trying something new. So don't let this discourage you guys from trying something new. You guys probably won't even see this, but it doesn't matter. It's all right.
Yeah.
Middle of the road.
Pretty lackluster.
Yeah.
There's definitely better October and pumpkin beers out there. So the last thing that we think could have saved the Wii U, which I think had they had their house in order,
Yes, it's
with all these
it's
prior things,
snowballing into this.
which all led to this last thing we're going to talk about, which this last thing we're going to talk about has kind of been the Achilles heel for Nintendo for quite some time. And maybe a little bit of a resurgence in this for the Nintendo Switch, but that is relationships with third-party developers.
Yes, so important.
And Nintendo is always doing something off the rails, obtuse, that doesn't really align itself with current generation of gamers. So they're kind of a pain in the nuts to work with
Yep.
for developers. You know, during the PS3, 360 era, their hardware couldn't handle. It kind of had to be scaled down because it was just a little notch above what the GameCube could do. Couldn't quite handle some of those games. Plus, then you add in monkeying around with motion
Yeah,
controls.
then it's just like,
And third-party developers are like, you bring out this console, which is kind of HD, kind of next-gen, can maybe do some of the stuff the
But
PS3 and
not quite.
Xbox 360 can do, and you're like, yeah, but you gotta get stuff to work with this fucking tablet.
yeah, and be able to cast it, and you can use two screens if you want to.
Yeah, and so we in prior episodes, again, we're not trying to shit on the Wii U, we love the Wii U. There are some developers that actually took these lemons and made some mighty fine, sweet, lip-puckering lemonade out of this situation. You know, the Batman Arkham City game,
So great.
great example. Deus Ex.
Axiom Verge.
Yes, tons of times where it worked. But all in all, you know, I think even on Madden, you know, the one that I think there's only one or two that came out that you could like call your plays on the tablet,
That's
which
pretty
was
cool.
really cool. But for the most part, I think third-party developers were kind of like, hey, sales are rough,
Yep.
confused branding, and they're a pain in the nuts to work with. We're just going to stick to what we know over here with the 360, PS3, PS4, Xbox One. And that's kind of what happened there. And I think Nintendo's still kind of difficult to work with in the fact that they've got an underpowered console, which is kind of becoming the new norm for Nintendo. Their consoles typically, if you put them in American Gladiators on a pedestal against that other buff dude, it's going to get its ass
Yep.
whipped. Their gimmicks, if you will, get them through. So the Switch is like, yeah, you know, it's not as powerful as my PS4, but I can play it on the shitter. I can play it when I'm mowing the lawn. I can play it when I'm riding the bus, an airplane, whatever it may be. And they have enough sales under them for developers to go, yeah, we'll monkey with that. The Wii U was already at a point where it was kind of a sinking ship, and developers were just like, deuces.
Yeah, I just feel like the Wii U was just a vicious cycle, a vicious cocktail, because one thing
Yeah.
didn't work, which led to the next thing.
Yep.
Like, going back to branding, dude, if they would have had better branding, then I think the third-party relationship, they would have hopped on sooner, because I just think
They're going to go where the money's
it
at.
all just fell down really quick,
Yeah.
which sucks. It was only in production for 5 years. So sad. It's one of my favorite consoles, dude.
Yeah.
But it just
I think
didn't get the chance it needed.
the one silver lining I think there is with the Wii U is it took that black eye, and that really just Nintendo just royally shitting the bed. And then as gamers, I think we are kind of rewarded by getting the Nintendo Switch, which we've got plenty of complaints with, you know, maybe their first party releases on the Switch, but all in all, the Switch is an awesome console.
Yeah, I love the Switch.
And as much as it annoys us when we hear people say, "Oh, the Switch is so great and the Wii U sucks," and it's like, well, it's playing all Wii U games. I get all that, and
Yeah.
that's kind of our stance because we're Wii U fanboys. But it is cool that people who missed out on this are, for the most part, getting a chance to play.
Yeah, and I
those
feel like
games.
the Switch is just kind of the next step of what they wanted to do with the Wii U. They just didn't have the hardware or anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of like, oh, if the Wii U would have succeeded, would the Switch have existed? Or maybe it would just came out later with
Yeah,
like a different... I don't know. It's kind of cool. So it is awesome that it failed. I hate saying that because we have the Switch, but...
It is what it is. You know, we love it, and those of you who love it too, you understand how
yeah.
awesome it is. Those of you who maybe don't, you know, I think you missed out on a good thing with the Wii U. The Switch doesn't bring you everything that the Wii U does. It does a decent job, but even some of those games, I think they benefit from a dual screen situation, which you
Yep.
can't do on the Switch. We love the Wii U, but damn it, Nintendo.
Come on.
Had you ironed some of these things out, it might have done just a little bit better. Guys, we always appreciate you tuning in, subscribing to the channel, and talking about things with us, like the freaking Wii U.
Yeah, we love it.
That's awesome stuff. We'll see you next time right here on gaming off the grid. So we're rolling here.
Pumpkin spice.
Ready?
And speaking of uneasy ground, I think another thing that sucked. Yeah. And speaking of being uneasy. And speaking of being, yeah. Pumpkin Spice Latte by Blake Time Brewery. It's an English stout.
Did you say Blake Time Brewery?
There was a weird hiccup. By Blake Time Brewery. Blake. It's a K.
Of all time, the Wii U. We were just oh man, dude, it's getting so hard to film anymore.
Why?
I mean, because I got these fucking balls hanging from my cock. And it makes it so hard. I get so tired.
Yeah, 'cause
especially these standing
You're
bits.
carrying around so
Yeah.
much weight.
Yeah, it's just brutal. It's taking its toll on my back. Should give this beer a test drive?
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. Would you like a little test drive? Alright. See if it's worth a shit. Does it have any flavor?